Welcome to the Handheld E-Learning webinar from NVL. My name is Kari Olstad. I'm a stand-in for Toril from Flexible Education Norway. And I will just get us started with this meeting. All attendees are having a chat window that will move around the screen a little bit. Only the presenters will have the audio, so the rest of us will just use the chat. And a lovely lady called Lisbeth will be monitoring the chat, so she will make sure your questions will be answered. She will try to collect your questions and ask them to the presenters. We will start this webinar off with a little poll, and then we will see 3 presentations from Peter, Solrun and Signe respectively. And we will then have anyone joining in a discussion about the topics that have been presented. So these are the questions that we would like your answers to. Do you teach people with special needs? Second question, do you work as a teacher? And last question, do you use ICT in your teaching? Okay. So that seems that we have our results in. So we see that we actually have more people teaching here than not. 60% say they work as a teacher. We actually have half of you teaching people with special needs and half saying no to that. And ICT, almost 70% of you say that you use ICT in your teaching. That's nice to know. Okay, then we'll actually move to the presentation, and the first person to present will be Peter Gunnerbo from Sweden. He's developing online teaching or training program for grown-ups with special needs, and he's also a teacher. So the rest of us will just mute our videos, mute our microphones, and we'll give the screen to Peter.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Peter and I'm from Sweden. I work with an organization called Dalavux, and as our host presented me, I'm helping teachers in adult education to work with digital tools, and the past 2 years I've been working especially with students, or actually with teachers handling students with special needs like neuropsychiatric disorders. I will start by showing you a video that I made that will present what we are working with. So after that, during the video, you may ask your questions if you have questions in the chat, and we will take care of the questions afterwards. So here is a little video for you guys.
Between the years of 2016 and 2018, Dalavux participated as part of the NordPlus Handheld E-Learning project. We shared our knowledge and experiences in the field of flexible learning, blended learning, and flipped classroom from the standpoint of adult students with neuropsychiatric disorders such as ADHD, Asperger's syndrome, and autism. The purpose of this NordPlus project was to develop handheld e-learning through a digital toolbox across the intercultural context. But before we go on, let's sort a few things out. What does flipped classroom, blended learning, and flexible learning mean? Flexible learning is a principle of practice in formal education, concerned with increasing flexibility in the requirements, time, and location of study, teaching, assessment, and certification. Blended learning refers to a blend of different learning environments. Blended learning combines traditional classroom methods with more modern computer-mediated activities. Blended learning is a kind of flexible learning, but it's not synonymous. Flexible learning can take place entirely at a distance, while blended learning always includes some physical meetings. The flipped classroom, also sometimes called the inverted classroom, is when the teacher, instead of lecturing in the physical classroom, records the lesson on film as an audio file or in other ways and then publish material online where students can access it around the clock. Handheld e-learning. The introduction of computers was the basis of this revolution, and with the passage of time, as we get hooked to smartphones, tablets, etc., these devices now have an important place in the classrooms for learning. Books are gradually getting replaced by electronic educational materials like optical discs, pen drives, or cloud services. Now, knowledge can be shared via the internet, which is accessible 24/7, anywhere, anytime. Neuropsychiatric disorders among adults. We created a survey focusing on the students' learning and the challenges in learning. Our survey results with adult students showed us that every other student had difficulties concentrating, with attention, and with only written instructions. Every fourth student was restless and had difficulties in focusing on the work, had difficulties communicating with other students, and had difficulties collaborating with other students to a larger or smaller extent. A hidden disorder. Within adult learning in Sweden, many of the students with challenges similar to ADHD, autism, and Asperger's syndrome has no clear diagnosis. In some cases, it depends on the school's lack of mapping the students' potentials and challenges. It might also depend on the students themselves. They might not have understood that they have a disorder, or they might not want to accept that they have a disorder. To be able to follow up on the students' development, we picked up specific indicators of neuropsychiatric disorders. Each indicator is a challenge that is found in these students, regardless if they have a specific diagnosis. The strength with using these indicators is that the teachers easier can understand the students' learning challenges and can implement a specific learning program to handle these challenges. The indicators are lack of concentration, lack of attention, restlessness, difficulties in communicating, difficulties collaborating, difficulties with group work, difficulties with unclear instructions, and difficulties with only written instructions. What do teachers need to know about technology? Teachers need basic knowledge and understanding of working with shared documents, creating accessible working material, use cloud services, create and use video, create and use audio, create and use classroom blogs, use computers, smartphones, and tablets, etc. Our way of working. To be able to train and educate teachers, we needed to set up the learning process in a flexible and modern way. Our keywords from day one has been: we practice what we preach, we focus on practical use, we use a formative approach throughout the entire process. The teachers have been provided with different opportunities and methods for learning and sharing. We have used workshops for groups of teachers. We have provided individual support remotely via Skype or Hangout. We have created a WordPress blog with easy instructions, access to our ebook, and more. We have created a Google Plus group for sharing material and experiences within the group. Based on some challenges during the first year, we put extra focus on specific areas for the second year. We increased focus on dissemination and anchoring in each school. We made visits in each municipal adult learning center with a presentation of our work and its results, and started a discussion about flexible learning and accessibility in each learning center. We created practical learning materials and guides and checklists for the teachers. We increased focus on peer learning, and we added a researcher to our team with a focus on distance learning and blended learning. Development and adaptation. We adapted our work process between year 1 and year 2 based on some challenges that our teachers experienced. Challenge. It takes time to get started. The teacher needs to get from training in flexible learning to practical use in the teacher's classroom. Solution. Increased depth in training to create a firmer foundation for the teacher's knowledge. Challenge. The teacher felt it was difficult to disseminate their knowledge to their colleagues. Solution. We created easy-to-use, hands-on working material for the teachers. Challenge. To get active participation in the project from the headmasters. Solution. A roadshow where we visited each adult learning center in Dalarna to inform and to discuss these issues. Challenge. Need of increased knowledge about neuropsychiatric disorders. Solution. More support and workshops with a special educator. Challenge. Knowing how to choose the right tool and solution. Solution. Creating different learning examples with suggested solutions for each challenge. Project portal and toolbox websites. During our time in the NordPlus Handheld Elearning project, we have collaborated on creating a project web portal. Here, we describe the project's intentions and share our knowledge on the subject. On this portal, you will find short introduction about each participating country's contribution to the project and a link to each country's own project website. These websites were also created as part of the NordPlus project and will work as a guide and digital toolbox for each country's field of expertise. On the Swedish website, you will find videos, information and step-by-step guides to help you and your school to get started on implementing flipped classroom, blended learning and flexible learning and much more. Please feel free to use and share all of our material in any way that can be of help for you.
That video kind of explains what flexible learning is all about on the big picture. And beside me I have my colleague Lena Eriksson. She's my working partner here in Sweden. Would you like to say hi to the audience?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I catch a cold in Boston and Iceland. I think it catches from Sine. So my voice is a little bit, you can hear it by yourself. I work as a project manager on Dalavux. And I think Peter had to do the talking today. Nice to meeting you guys anyway.
Thank you. And we will have the occasion to ask Peter and Lena more questions after the rest of the presentations. So the next one that we want to hear from is Solrun Bergstoradottir from Viska Læringssenter at the Vestmannaeyjar, and that's in Iceland. She is also a teacher teaching people with special needs, and I can see she's already ready with her presentation.
Yes, fine. Okay, hi, I'm Solrun. I'm actually an educational, a career counselor, and I work at the Lifelong Learning Center Viska in the Westman Islands in Iceland. And at Viska, we offer adults various educational possibilities and assist them in starting anew and to deal with hindrances in learning. Now, but I want to talk about a little bit how adult learners are, their diverse needs and challenges. Okay, so now teachers of adults, they face certain challenges or demands compared to teachers who work in primary school. Now, while pedagogy, generally thought of as teacher-centered or directive learning, has served primary school teaching well, andragogy serves adult teaching better as it is a learner-focused approach. Now, there are certain things that teachers of adults must be aware of and should take into consideration when planning and performing lessons. Now, though adults can to a certain extent be defined as one group of learners, they must also be recognized as diverse, both in life experiences, personalities, and their use of learning styles. Now, furthermore, many of them deal with learning barriers like dyslexia, ADHD, ADD, etc., now which often has led to a negative school experience. Now, they are also adults. They may assume responsibility and act self-directed. But the interchange of experiences in teaching situations can be regarded as pushy or intrusive when students are challenged to take new steps, and therefore the interchange of experiences needs to be controlled by the teacher, who must acknowledge the adult's personal boundaries. When adults participate in learning processes in an educational program, it must be experienced as useful, meaningful, and has to stem from a need to learn in order to instill both the conscious and subconscious motivation. But if the learner is participating involuntarily, his motivation and teaching experiences may be affected negatively, which makes it challenging for the teacher to connect with him. Adult learning is affected by their life experiences, but prior experiences can be a resource or a barrier, and old learning strategies may have to be unlearned before new can take place. Adults are considered to be responsible for their own learning, as they are considered to have free will. But this is not valid if they are forced to participate in an education program. Again, if the learner is forced to attend against his own will, the pedagogical paradox of learning becomes a further challenge for the teacher, who has to navigate in an asymmetric relation between two adults. Bearing this in mind, there is a need for a flexible approach in the learning and teaching environment, both physical and theoretical. There are some methods that have been developed and have proven successful, like blended learning and flipped learning. In Iceland, distance learning has become a popular method in the rural areas for obvious reasons. But as popular and often successful distance learning is, it is possibly not suitable for learners with learning disabilities such as ADHD, ADD, and mental health problems, due to the learner's limited attention span and lack of organizational skills. That is particularly the case when the studies are solely based on learning on your own, or the teaching material is monotonous and lack in quality. The mixture, however, of distance and flipped learning, for instance, is often quite successful. Then a learner watches an e-learning video or participates in another online learning experience at home, but then gets the chance to explore the new materials at length with his peers. Blended learning can also be successful in this learning environment, as it involves both online and face-to-face instruction. In this case, online materials do not take the place of face-to-face instruction. Instead, the two complement one another. They truly blend in order to create an enriched online training environment for the learner. Now, There is an increasing awareness of the importance of taking into account the physical aspect of the learning environment. The classical alignment does not suit everyone, especially if one has learning disabilities. Flexibility is necessary to enhance variety of teaching methods as well as learning methods. Here we can see three different types of learning environment. On the right, there is a familiar setting. Students in alignment facing the teacher but not each other. Top left, you can see a classroom where learners not only can choose the facilities that suit their particular needs, but also where there is made easier for them to work together. Down left, you get a glimpse of a possible future in learning, something which is not that far ahead. Here's another version of a possible learning environment. Would this furniture work in a classroom? What purpose would it serve? Or does it make any difference? Here is an example of an untraditional learning environment. In this case, the learners chose their furniture. Considering the possible variety of learning disabilities amongst adults, it is important to take into account the attention span in learning. Again, flexibility is necessary to maximize the learning outcome for the student, both regarding time and learning methods. The combination of time spent on studying and the learning styles used has a great effect on how well one acquires and digests the material. This graph shows how well learned material sticks in your memory. Imagine you have attended a class in which you paid attention, you participated, and you noted down important points. Great. After this class, you can still remember the gist of the material. Now, if you do not work any further with this material, review it, or do some exercises, research shows that 50 to 80% is lost from your mind on the second day. If you do nothing further in a week or month, little or none will be left in your memory at the end of the term. It is therefore very important to help the adult learner acquire learning strategies that will maximize the learning outcome. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Soren, do you want to add anything else before we move on to the last presentation?
No, I would like to just hear questions afterwards and to discuss further then.
Perfect. And then we are ready for our last presenter, and that will be Signe Kongstad from Folkeoplysningen in Aarhus, Denmark. She teaches persons with special needs as well.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Okay. Hello, and I'm from Denmark, and I would like to share my screen, and that will be in 1 minute. You can see it?
Yes, Signe, this is very fine.
Okay, thank you. This is a presentation mainly focusing on how to approach dyslexic students in higher education. And I come from FO in Aarhus, and we have also participated in this project with the Nordic countries, and it's been a great experience for us. So, and I would like to present now how we approach students in the higher education. And what is this kind of student challenges? We have many students with very late diagnosis. They are very late in life find out that they are dyslexic, and then they have to get used to it. And it's a very, personal process to get used to being unable to do the same as the other students in their education. And they always or very often feel very stigmatized. Especially this shows in working in groups. So we are very aware of that. And also because the educational demands for using new skills and the way of dyslexic have difficulties by remembering. So because they have very short working memory, they have difficulties in all these reading all these big amounts of assignments. All the students that I have, they have all these digital tools, but they are not, I call it, without the box, because they are not aware of how to use them in the best way. So I will get back to that. Because what are they facing as a student? They have to learn how to communicate and understand a lot of new knowledge in different subjects that they're not used to, this kind of quantity of reading. So that increases, and also new genres, because they also have to write in a new way and read in another way than reading just for fun, because the language is very academic. And they also need to use English language for studying, and that many dyslexic students have not been practicing their English because they have had so many difficulties in reading and writing. So that's neglected in many ways. So how can we approach these students? What do they need to know to be a student? I have all these different skills that they have to find out how they find their own strategies in all these areas. And they have to be able to find out how to do it themselves, because there's not much help in these educational level. And how can handheld e-learning be used as a comprehensive tool? These students are mainly in need of a different set of tools, because they are, especially the reading out text, because the amount increases and they're very slow readers. So they need to hear these texts instead of reading them themselves. And also have some word suggestion programs to suggest how to spell words, because they have problems with that. And also to be able to dictate maybe the text instead of writing. And also they need to have different scanning features or programs, so they are able to convert the text into readable text forms. And also so they can listen. In Denmark we have an internet library where you can get all the study books that has been read in a normal voice instead of the digital voice, because sometimes that's easier to understand, and they make the right pronunciation and dictation also. Then of course they are able to use the apps on their smartphones for many different purposes, as well as normal students can use them, but they need to know how they can use these apps. I have an example here. Just imagine if the student comes to a class and they get this difficult text from the teacher. It's just a copy on a paper, and it's very much like that still in the higher education. They get some notes, or maybe just on the cloud, but they're not converted to a readable text. So how do they get able to read this? So to make it readable, so they can hear it, they need to scan it and then convert it into another form, so they can get it reading out loud. And when they have done that, they must listen, maybe several times, because once is not enough. They can go back and hear some lines again. And how to remember all this very packed text, because the texts are very full of many professional terms. So they can maybe dictate their notes. Here they can use maybe their smartphones to dictate the notes. And also when they are going to write a text about the same subject, they have to use the computer, and then they can use the copied text from before, and then they can put it into make their own dictionary in the word suggestion program. And then when they write, they can get the new suggestions in the same words that are used in the text they've been reading. So that's a good way of expanding their word vocabulary. So when they have to write, they have these new suggestions, or they can dictate their text and then listen to their own text with their headset, and then correct it again, and so on and so forth. And this shows that they have to navigate between all these different programs to get to the same result as many of the other students. They don't need this, but when you are dyslexic, you need to compensate for your lack of skills. So in this project, we have exchanged all this know-how and talked about all the different kind of tools and seen how can we use it. And in my point of view, the most important thing is to keep these dyslexic students in their education or in their studies, so they won't drop out, because that's a big problem in the higher education, that they drop out very early because they give up. And that's my most important assignment, to keep them in their studies. So this is just how we can exchange know-how and use this new portal to get some more ideas and inspiration from each other. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Signe.
Thank you. Okay, then I think that we will open for discussion. Lisbeth, did you catch any questions along the presentations?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
There was just a few questions. Like Anna asked if you can find the graph that Solron showed, if you can find that online. Okay, and then there was another question which might help on this. Can we access the webinar online afterwards? Because then you could see the graph again.
We can post the webinar recording on the portal, maybe. That would be a good idea afterwards.
Yes,
yeah.
Very good idea. Yes, and while you write that, I could ask, Haldora is asking what programs are the students using? I guess that's for senior.
They mainly use some, they can use IntoWords, or we have something called CD, and it's a word suggestion program, and also it can read out text both in Danish or English, and you can choose your own voices, and they mainly use this. But there is always new programs coming up. So I can write it down on the, what do you want? Anything to be written down, or?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes.
And also, Malene asks if the students work together at any time, or are they using the different facilities on their own? That's for you as well.
I normally have small groups of students. Sometimes they're from different education, and sometimes they attend the same level or the same brand of education. Maybe teachers, dyslexic teachers, and then we make a group, and then they exchange knowledge all the time. So they both have this the working together, but they learn from each other how to cope with the different subjects or the assignments. So and also it's very important in the face-to-face communication is that they feel that they are not alone. So they're not alone with this new diagnosis. So that's a big issue for me, to have these groups together. But they work separately, but they help each other anyway, also.
Thank you. Somebody else is writing right now. Oh.
Yeah, so good. While we're waiting, could I ask you one question, Solrun? Because you said that
Yes.
it was important to have a flexible approach. And I wondered, how do you deal with the progression, the flexibility in progression, that some grown-ups sometimes need to take a break from studies, or they want to increase their pace in studies?
Well, our experience is mainly with the studies called grunnmenntaskólinn. It's the first step of an adult to start studying again after a long break. And there we emphasize on that the students will not be pressured by exams, or that they all have to be on the same pace, or on the same place, for instance, in math. So the teacher adapts it, because we don't have that many students in one classroom, generally 10 to 12, not more. So that gives the opportunity for the teacher to make it very flexible. So the aim is that the student will find his own pace, and he can, each one can work on his own pace, and the end goal is that he will have, not that he would have finished a particular amount of material, but had increased his understanding. And so in the end, after the winter, because these are 2 terms, the students are in different places, but that's okay, because this is a review, it's a beginning. So that's why we see the flexibility is there's great possibilities in keeping it flexible in this type of course. Did I answer your question?
Sorun, there's another question for you. It's very long.
Yes?
Can you read it yourself? It's from Anheidur.
Okay, who is that? Solon, you are recommending the flipped classroom so that time students have together will be better. Well, I think this mixture of learning methods are very important. You make like a framework for that is flexible for the students, so they have different needs. But I mean, to enforce that this will stick in the memory, they have to learn these learning strategies, and they can be very different between students, and using peers can be very helpful. That is to say, you learn, you get an introduction in class, at home, and then you come together, and then they can work in different ways according to what it suits them. And the more they talk together about this, the more they work together, the better it sticks in their memory, I believe. Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for the next question, Peter, can I ask you, your students, are they using social media? And if they are, do you communicate with them on social media, like Facebook?
Yes, they do. They use different forms of platforms, different types of platforms. They use social media to communicate. Some teachers and students use social media like private groups and even open groups, and they use Facebook and Google Plus and whatever suits them. Another thing that they use that we have been working with for a few years now, to the teachers they create their own classroom blogs using some common types of tools like WordPress, Google Sites, and alike, to build their own kind of learning platform between teachers and students, and between students and so on. So there's a big amount of good and easy to use tools to make them communicate. We are teaching teachers, actually in Dalavux, we are teaching teachers to use these tools and methods in order to learn from each other, and then they implement these teaching methods on their students. I didn't say it before, but Dalavux is serving 15 municipalities in Sweden, in the county of Dalarna. So we are actually kind of an umbrella organization that helps all these 15 municipalities adult education with these types of things and much more. I'm reading the questions here. And one more for Peter. Your goal in the program was to teach teachers to use the techniques. That's part of the goal. I do that all the time, and I have an interaction with the teachers around the region. And it's not just the tools, it's actually knowledge about NPD, that's neuropsychiatric disorders, and also for students that do not experience these types of challenges, because these tools are useful for everyone. If it's good for this kind of group, and it's good for everyone to use. So let's see what my colleague is writing here. She wants to say something here. Actually, it's not just the tools, it's understanding about an inclusive study environment, and this group of students are included in a different way by using these types of tools, because many of these students have a hard time communicating, working in groups and so on. So this is a very good opportunity that opens up for them to be a part of the learning environment and a part of the classmates' work as well, without actually having to be in the room.
Thank you. I got a question for everybody from Malene. While working together across countries, what differences and similarities have you identified between countries?
I can try.
Yeah.
I think in Denmark we have not the same geography as in the other Nordic countries, so we're not that used to distant learning, and I think that would be one of the new way of getting a new learning environment in Denmark, to use more of these blended learning, flexible learning, and flipped classroom. That would be my attention, my hope, that we could be able to use this more, because we don't have that much experience in using this, because we're a small country and everybody can meet, and that has some advantages, but the other thing would be also very good, I think.
I would like to answer a little bit about that. We found out that there are great difference between countries in using technology. Some of us are very far and do much of it, but others don't. As well, the difference is great because in Greenland and Iceland we have great many rural areas, so we are used to use distance learning, which the other haven't done as much. But the main thing, we have learned really much from each other, and I will say that we are stronger afterwards. So if that answers you, Malene, I hope we do.
Yes, and then we got one question from Anna. How do we get the students to get motivated to hand in their to do what they're supposed to do, or to hand in their assignments at Google Classroom? Do you have any suggestions?
Should I say something about that?
Yes, you got the experience, I think.
Actually, that's a very common question, and the short answer for that question is that there is no short answer to that question, actually. But first of all, you need to engage the school we are starting at the top of the school. This is a cultural question, actually, on the school, because first of all, you need to engage the headmasters, and they need to show the whole school their way of working. This is a big change in school, and it takes time. You need to bring the teachers on the ships, so to speak, and you need to implement and start changing slowly but surely everything you do in school using digital learning. This is actually not a distance learning tool. This is tools for making the education more accessible for each and everyone that is studying. So once they can be shown and see the possibility that opens up for them to learn easier, my experience is that when the students can discover that and they can see the good thing about using this, then they will also start using it more and more. That's my experience. So it's a long answer, but and it's a very it's a lot of things to think about. On our webpage, on the Swedish webpage, you have very useful guides, all in English, to help your school, your teachers, your headmasters, and everything to easier be able to discuss and implement flexible learning at your school. And we also mention and talk about the challenges that you mention here, as Google Classroom, for instance. We mention how to deal with those types of questions. If you look at our webpage, it's all in there. So hopefully it will be helpful for you.
Thank you.
And you can get to each country's website by pressing the portal webpage. Then you can come to all the different countries.
Yes, exactly. And I put the links here in the discussion notes, as you can see.
Yes, there's one more question. I guess we don't have time for much more, but one is, what do you say about tools like Google Classroom for people with attention problem and lack of scheduling skills. What's your experience? What do you
Oh,
say? Can you see
okay.
it now?
What do you say about tools like Google Classroom for people? Yeah. Actually, Google Classroom is not a tool. It's more like a LMS, learning management system. It's not the tool itself. If you hand over Google Classroom to your students and you don't fill it with content, it's worth nothing. So it's actually the content that you put there that should be the tools, the accessibility tools, and the things that makes this interesting for the students to come back to. So Google Classroom by itself is not a tool. It's just a place to put the tools on. A digital classroom, so to speak.
And I think with that note, making it interesting for the students, we have rounded the hour.
Malene, there's one attendant just writing something right now.
While she is writing, I will just thank all the participants for active participation and all the presenters for sharing and for continuing sharing on the portal.